5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. He was not giving me the finger. That's Ed Catto, the wonderful man who is behind Ithacon and a lot of other things. And we've talked a million times on Word Balloon, but I'm happy and sad to welcome you back, Ed, because obviously you've got some sad news regarding Ithacon.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be with you, and I feel so many times you drive with me as I listen to Word Balloon podcast. But yeah, we're on the cutting edge of a difficult time for conventions, and this little convention has just succumbed to it as well. So yeah, an amazingly weird time.
You're right, South by Southwest, Emerald City, obviously, and now Ithacon. And I'm sorry because I also appreciate the vibe you put on Ithacon in terms of it being academic as well as a fun convention.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, just as a quick background, Ithacon, nation's second longest running comic convention, was founded 45 years ago by a couple fellas, Bill Turner and Tim Gray, and they're both still involved. Bill Turner is super involved with it, and our intent was to celebrate 45 years this go round. We've done this thing. We'll get into it a little more, where Ithacon has been folded into Ithaca College, which is this unique situation. So we use it as a teaching opportunity as well as being like one of the best little conventions. I always say Ithacon punches above its weight class. Boxing reference for you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And but we just came to the bitter decision this morning that we're going to have to cancel/postpone Ithacon 45, and it's a heartbreaker.
I understood, man. No, I don't want to rub salt in the wound, but can you talk about some of the panels that you had planned for the show?
Oh yes, it was going to be the best one ever. Ithacon has this reputation of attracting some fantastic guests, and this year was going to be another one with great guests. So we had Mike Gold, longtime DC editor, first comics editor,
Sure.
Humanitarian of the Year award at the Ringos a few years ago. Great guy, a man of 1,000 stories. And
editor of Suicide Squad, Hawkman. I'm trying to think of the other great, from the DC run.
Green Arrow. Yeah,
right.
As I told the students, in some ways, I would say that you wouldn't have all those CW superhero shows without a guy like Mike Gold, who rejuvenated Green Arrow and the Flash,
and things like the Suicide Squad. I mean, John Ostrander obviously wrote it, but
right.
No, you're right. Mike shepherded it through, and and of course his work at First Comics as well as an editor. John Sable and Grimjack and Badger and Nexus, of course.
Yeah, and so we set up a couple panels with him. He was going to give our keynote speech. And then we're also going to have a panel where we talk about rebooting some of those properties. And we're going to drag in some guys like Roger Stern, who's a local fellow who we always seem to get as a guest. We're grateful to have Roger's involvement. And then also Tom Payer, who was involved with like the Atom Rebirth, right as that series was ending and he was starting his career.
Our Man as well. He literally rebooted Our Man as an android, and also what he's doing at is it Vault that he's at?
Yeah, no, he's at Ahoy Comics.
Ahoy, excuse me. Yes, sorry about that.
Yeah, and that leads into one of the things that another great panel. We're going to have an Ahoy panel. Ahoy was going to be a publisher who was going to show up at Ithacon, and they've been fantastic. They've already come in and spoken to the classes. Tom Payer, Frank Camuso, Chief Creative Officer. And also the fellow who's the publisher, Hart Seeley, and
cool.
we were really excited to have them. I love the stuff they're doing.
Forgive me, I'm gonna interrupt you for a second. So is it canceled or is it postponed at the con?
Well, you know what? You are the reporter on the edge. We don't even know that yet.
Okay.
We made the decision this morning. And we're working with the college. We're with Ithaca College, and it's definitely not going to happen in the time it was going to happen, March 21 and 22nd.
Sure.
But we're evaluating whether or not we could shift it, or maybe we just save it for next year. And those are the real decisions that we're in the midst of working through. And those are, tough struggles. Look, nobody got hurt, and it's all entertainment, but there is so much effort that a lot of people have put into it up till now. And, it's a struggle to kind of balance the effort people have put in with, the potential for, throwing a great party. And that's
Understood. And public safety obviously has to come first. And I mean, this is a legitimate concern, especially in New York. As we're talking today, it was Westchester County was kind of announced to be a containment area. And I was talking to some of my friends, like the people at Ithacon Comics in Harrison, and what's going on, because they're pretty close. They're outside of that circle, but they're really close and everything. And yeah, man, no, we're hearing about it at shows like South by Southwest and Emerald City, and it's not just the people that run the shows, but obviously it's the creators that we're planning to exhibit. It's the fans. I mean, I almost, when it first hit with Emerald City, I was almost of the mind that maybe they were still going to go on with it from a morale standpoint.
Yeah.
But and shame on me. It's like, well, yeah, but I mean, really, Washington is one of the worst areas right now, and yeah, it's just too much of a public health risk.
Right.
I guess,
Yeah, and the other thing you weigh is, well, how about that guy who is the weekend warrior who sells old comics and toys? Like, this really impacts his ability to make money. Or how about the restaurant across from the convention center?
Absolutely.
All the this
hotels, everything.
Hotels, everything. It just cascades. It's a big domino effect.
And I'll tell you, this is my first conversation about convention season after doing C2E2.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, I'm really glad I got it in. But literally that Monday after the show, I'm driving to teach at Columbia, and I'm hearing my radio station, worlds colliding. All three are colliding because they make the announcement on BBM radio.
Yeah.
McCormick Place suddenly cancels its next two shows because of the concerns. And we had a houseware show. And it's so interesting because they're like, 60,000 people come in for housewares. It's like, I think we have around 90,000 with C2E2. At least that's what Chris Delandro was telling me. And and again, they point out, just like you said, it's the restaurants. These vendors as well that come. And it hurts their business. I mean, no, obviously the economic effect. We're watching the stock market every day. Yeah. I don't mean for this to get dry and newsy and sad, but no, it's interesting. And also, again, I always say this, and I'm sure you feel the same way, Ed. We're lucky we get to go to out-of-town conventions.
Yeah.
And it really invigorates me. I mean, C2E2 was fantastic. It was great seeing fans. But, I mean, hey, we look forward to San Diego. We look forward to our trips away. I always say it's like expensive summer camp, but in the case of Word Balloon, I'm getting guests, I'm doing panels and stuff. But also, I won't deny from a psychological standpoint, it's like, it's so nice to see my out of town friends and check in with everybody and meet Word Balloon listeners. I mean, it really is a very energizing experience. So forgive my selfishness, but yeah, it's like, oh man, I really hope this gets contained, of course, from a public safety standpoint, but then we can get back to normal too, and pursue what we want to do and enjoy our downtime with our nerd loves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not like if this was the music industry, we'd have these concerts that we get together, but instead, in this industry, everybody works really hard and toils away. They're drawing or writing or creating stuff, and then they sell it, and then you interact with the media in a certain way, but the time when you socialize or get together or celebrate the wins or mourn the losses is at these conventions. And, that fluid season throughout the year of all the conventions is so special and so important for this industry too.
Absolutely. It's another way that they can promote the product, all the publishers, and, we get excited about new books or other new projects that are coming out, certainly new TV shows and film. It's going to be interesting. I mean, obviously with South by Southwest, I don't know if there are any video chat contingency plans they're trying to do to represent the brand without actually being able to have the live event. But, and again, as this progresses, I don't know how other cons are going to react. It's going to be interesting. I think everyone's kind of holding our breath and seeing how the rest of March, moves on, and also maybe into April. I mean, I guess WonderCon is the next big con that's kind of on the bubble right now.
Right. Yeah. No, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. And, and we were, for Ithacon, we were very privileged that a couple publishers chose us as places that they would make a mark and spend some
Yeah.
time and energy and money. And Ahoy was one, and the other was your friends at Aftershock, and they were setting up a booth, and we were bringing in Stephanie Phillips, and that was really great. But as you think about their marketing schedule too, it's like, well, gee, this was a piece of their puzzle where
Sure.
they were going to get the word out, and now it's not going to happen, or at least not in that way. I mean, maybe there is a way to make it happen so we can do some online things. We're actually kind of trying to figure that out as well.
There you go, man. And honestly, and I appreciate you doing the video today because I think that might be a component moving forward as well. And I've even floated that idea to several creators and said, beyond the podcast, would it be okay if we do video? And you'll forgive me, but I'm so self-conscious about the way I look. That's why I'm just a little avatar in the corner of
You're beautiful. All that hair. I'm jealous. All that hair.
Better. We all know better. That's right. And I was willing to put up the 2 C2E2 panels live. That's okay. I'm cool with that.
Yeah,
but,
right.
This is really spur of the moment, and that's why I definitely still have bedhead, Ed, with my radio work and everything.
Yeah, you have a tough schedule.
We're all working hard. It's all right.
Oh my gosh, aren't we though? Aren't we?
But I was telling you before we started recording, I feel very Edward R. Murrow right now. Where yes, hello, Groucho. Thank you for letting us in your living room. So I would take a moment and point out some of the original art you got behind yourself. And also, I don't even know, like the Action Comics that's right by the door, is that a print or is that a framed copy of an actual comic? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that's those, who's the guys who do that? They do these beautiful calendars.
Oh, I see. Oh, excuse me. I didn't even know. You see, again, not observing.
The Supergirl calendar, I think. And so that's great. Although this one is a beauty. Oh, we're expecting a new family member, a little girl, so we're prepared.
Little Batgirl. Very nice.
This is actually a cool book. It's detective number, let's see, 358. I remember that as a kid. Batman faces this obscure bad guy called the Spellbinder, but that is Jack Schiff's file copy. So the old editor, that kind of floated around, and it came with a certificate, and I knew the guy that was bought from. So to have that copy on my wall is kind of fun.
That's amazing. That's really cool, man. I've never seen anyone display that kind of editor's copy of a book. That's wonderful.
Yeah, one time Paul Levitz gave me some editor's copies of the old '60s Captain Action books.
Oh God, yes, and I know I imagined Captain Action would figure into the conversation at some point. But yeah, man, you're the keep. Are you still the keeper of the character? Do you still have the license on it?
Absolutely, yeah. I have my great two partners, Joe Ahern and Michael Polis, and we're still fighting the good fight with that and having so much fun with it too.
Well, as me, man, I'm an old OG Captain Action fan. I think I've told you before, the doll didn't survive, but the Aquaman costume did.
That's so cool.
And I remember like commandeering one of my sister's Ken dolls, and even though he was much too big for the suit, I'd stretch it over him and stuff, and it worked for me. It's like, all right, man, poor man's Captain Action happening.
You probably had great adventures with that Aquaman. I love it.
He came to the beach with me a few times.
Great.
That sounds salacious, but it's true.
Oh, there was a lot of crime there on that beach. You had to tamp down. No, that's wonderful.
The beaches of Lake Michigan, and as someone in the Five Fingers area, you can appreciate that. So.
Oh yes, right. Yeah, has Aquaman ever been to Lake Michigan officially? Maybe that was his first time.
There you go. Seriously, hey, we should be pitching DC right now. That is a great thing. Of instead of the oceans, Aquaman is some of the has a Great Lakes mystery that he has to solve.
Absolutely. Summer vacation. There's work with the tourism board. I see it fitting together. It's fantastic.
Talk to the oh God, what is it? Was it Pike that they no Smelt? Does he talk to the Smelt to help him solve a crime?
Here, I used to go smelting. I love Smelt.
There you go. That's totally a Great Lakes fishing kind of thing.
Yeah, how crazy.
All right, before this becomes an outdoor show, we'll get back to
right.
We'll get back to you said that Paul Levitz gave you that Captain Action, and of course Gil Kane, one of the great artists that worked on that limited series.
Yeah, yep. Gil Kane and Wally Wood, and
Yeah.
that series had Jim Shooter started writing it, and then Gil took over, and that was the first series that he wrote.
Wow.
Yeah,
In
and
these cases, that's amazing. So, and again, given the time frame, that's probably still maybe 15 or 16-year-old Jim Shooter. Maybe not as early as when he started writing the Legion, but definitely a pre-18 Jim Shooter probably writing that stuff.
it was, and then Wally Wood on the first issue. Wally Wood put the credits on the page, so the letter didn't do it. Wally Wood did, and that was Shooter's first recognized credit in a
Wow.
comics by Jim Shooter and Wally Wood.
Pretty amazing, man.
Yeah, yeah. And then the only news I have on that, we announced it last year. We were working very hard. We're thrilled to be working with IDW and Scott Dumbier on the collected edition for that those old DC books.
Hey, that's great.
Yeah, we kind of worked hard to get the rights and make it just so. And it's going to be beautiful. And, everything Scott touches reprint wise just comes out, astonishingly lovely. And we couldn't be more thrilled.
What kind of back matter, if you don't, I don't know how much you're allowed to talk about in terms of putting it together.
Well, that's the thing. There's a lot of cool stuff out there and like some obscure stuff. There was a giveaway comic with this marvelously mediocre Chick Stone artwork, and we have some like concept sketches from our old buddy Murphy Anderson, like concept for Hawkman, and I'm not sure if we'll be able to sneak that in, but we'd really love to. So, yeah, we've got all this ephemera that we just want to pack in and make it super special.
Good essays, I would imagine, too, for the book. I mean, maybe yourself, in fact.
Oh yeah, well, you know what? We got a guy who's a pretty good writer named Mark Wade doing our introduction, and actually he did our introduction. It reads gorgeous. It's wonderful.
Outstanding. That's right. Well, and again, Mark and I are about the same age, so yeah, we would have been people that were looking for the Captain Action thing. And of course, I always have to point out that there is this rivalry. I don't know if you can call it full-on war, but certainly there are the Captain Action folk and there are the Mego folk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the interesting thing about all those people who love Mego are totally wrong, and the people who love Captain Action are totally right. So,
well, and of course, beyond having the license and putting out new books and things like that, you've been putting out great new Captain Action costumes and masks, featuring the art of a lot of our favorite comic book people.
That was the beauty of the whole project. So through that, we were able to work with, all of our old friends and all of our new friends. So, everyone from Stephen Grant to Fabian to, Mike Lilly to guys like Murphy Anderson. And we had so much fun that the people that we dragged in to do stories and to do artwork and just covers, man, Marv Wolfman, and just the list goes on and on. It was just so much fun. It was just a ball. And
in addition to that, I was thinking of the toys and how you had Walt Simonson, do the Thor, and the mask really looks like Walt Simonson's Thor.
Absolutely,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Any other projects like Walt? I forget.
Yeah, well, we were super fussy, as a marketing guy, super fussy about the packaging. So when we did our Thor, we wanted the product to look just so. And that one, like Marvel, gave us the list. Like, you can use all this artwork. And we said, oh, yeah, we don't like that Vinnie Coletta ink stuff. How about this one or that one? And, and they were very pleasant to work with. Okay, sure. If that's what you want. So we worked, and the Thor one was actually tricky. So we worked with Jeff Vaughn from the Overstreet Comic Book Price Guide, and we used Thor image that Walter did for Overstreet and put that on, and that was beautiful. Yeah, just another Walter image, but that was great. And it's interesting as we talk about like COVID-19 and those issues. I'll tell you this. The virus and some of the trade issues really affect the toy world. So making all the toys has gotten so much more difficult, and especially getting the toys in from China has been just a bear.
That's I'm glad you brought that up. And also, I know too, a lot of independent publishers, both creator-owned stuff and smaller publishers, they get their books from China. So you're right. Good Lord, how's that? That's a very interesting point, and we'll see how that impacts things moving forward, and what barges aren't able to come. Those slow boats from China that you normally do deliver. I remember talking to Brubaker about that, and all the criminal and other Brubaker collections were being published in China and stuff. And it's like, well, when are they coming? It's like, well, within this period, a 3-month period or so. And yeah, so that'll be interesting to see how that impacts things. And yeah, you're right about toys. My God. Jesus.
Yeah, I worry about, everybody who's, trying to make it for fourth quarter. I'll give you Edward R. Murrow scoop. We essentially just canceled our San Diego variant toy because we didn't have the certainty that it would get here in time.
Understood. Wow. Sure, man.
So,
and that's so Ed, as someone who displays at San Diego and stuff, and does a lot there and everything, when do you think ballpark wise, if you don't hear something from the event first, like where it's like, yeah, maybe we won't go? You think May? You think April? What do you think?
Geez, so much of things, I think, especially in the industry of comics, everybody's got an opinion and oh, I know what happened with Dan DiDio. Oh, no, I know.
Please. Yeah.
And I think the answer is who knows? And if I'm to be honest, I'd say I have no idea. I mean, I think This is a day by day. Look, I understand there's so much money involved with it and, can make or break people's years for their company or their role. So you want to be able to figure it out. But, it's a crazy one. New York State, we're recording this on the 10th. New York State yesterday, I think, doubled their number of COVID outbreaks.
Yes.
Right? So it's like, who knows where this is all going?
Understood.
I had more understanding of it.
I hear you, man. No. And like I said, I just even wonder just from a gut feeling and everything. And again, I share that even not as an exhibitor, but I was potentially going to San Diego this year. And now it's like, now it's a 50-50 prospect, obviously, because of all the health stuff. So let's move on to a happier subject. One collection you were telling me about that you're involved in, a Pirates comics collection coming up?
Sure. And that segues nicely from San Diego. So, that's a great book. We just got these copies, beautiful copies.
The EC ones, absolutely, man.
Yeah, so it's actually it's super funky. So one of my students and one of my students who was in our Ithacon class, and this is again the unique class where we learn about pop culture, we learn about trade shows and conventions, and then the students run Ithacon essentially. And it's a marvelous experience all around. One of the students, a superstar, said, I have a lot of different interests, and one of my interests, Professor Catto, is pirates. And I go to these academic conferences and I give talks on pirates. And she complained about how, it's not really that exciting to give them at an academic conference, or it's prestigious, but doesn't have the, pizzazz of a Comic-Con. So I said, look, let's see if we can get you a spot at San Diego. I think this would be a fantastic thing to speak about, pirate comics or pirates in
Sure.
Sure. And San Diego bit, and they said yes. And then not only did they do that, but there was a problem with another panel. So they moved her up to a fantastic time on Saturday of the show at 4. And I'm moderating this panel. We had another expert, Krista Rosansky, and then this woman whose name is Naomi Hansen. And I thought it'd be a pretty good panel. And it was bananas. It was packed. There were so many pirate fans in room 8, I think. I mean, my goodness, I can't believe it. There were so many people. I've had the good fortune of moderating panels with Joe Kubert and Neil Adams, and I think we had more people at this pirate panel than the Kubert panel. How bananas is that? So it's just overwhelming. So after that panel, I spoke with Craig Yo of Yo Books, and I said, Craig, we've got to satiate this, and we'll have so much fun, and pull together a pirate book. And to his credit, he said, yeah, let's take a gamble. There's this old joke that pirate comics never sell. Truism for the comics industry, but we found these fantastic old pirate books, and we pulled them together. This is actually a kind of like a trade paperback
Yeah.
It's published by Clover, and they did a beautiful job. But in many ways, it's like an 80-page giant comic, and all us Silver Age guys would love those old 80-page giants. So,
Absolutely, man.
yeah, so this has stories from like Frazetta, Wally Wood, Carl Burgos, Reed Crandall, Will Eisner. It's just a beautiful compilation of, all these old piratey stories. And as you say, this is the deluxe version, and the cover is really based off of that old EC pirate book.
Sure. Yeah.
And the EC one, Reed Crandall actually ripped off Howard Pyle for this
Oh my
illustration. So we kind of went back in time. We put the Howard Pyle on the front and dressed it up to be evocative or respectful of the old EC books and their trade dress. So
That's awesome, man. I'm glad you mentioned Reed Crandall in particular,
Yeah.
because that's a great Golden Age creator that doesn't get enough love. And also, that's a great story, but I don't want people that are younger to get the opinion of, Reed Crandall, and maybe put him in the Vinnie Coletta box. It's like, no. He's a great artist and everything.
No.
Give a little background on Reed Crandall, man.
Yeah, no, we'll do. Yeah, I could give an hour on Reed Crandall. I just bought a coverless Blackhawk story with Reed Crandall, and it's beautiful. Panels,
yeah, man,
just beautiful.
So yeah, just no, but if you don't mind, just to tell people a little bit beyond Blackhawk, some of the great things that Reed Crandall was doing back then.
Oh, sure. Well, Reed Crandall was kind of like one of those super solid guys. So he was fantastic at drawing like ordinary people and like the wrinkles and clothing,
yes,
and beautiful women, and also he had that ability to really compose panels in such a way so they had a lot of action. And we might look at him and say, boy, that's so crowded now. But when Crandall did it, it never looked crowded. It always looked, very natural and laid out. IDW put out a artist edition of Reed Crandall recently.
Yep.
You might know him from quality stuff like Blackhawk or Dollman. And, he's one of those creators who, later in life maybe didn't have a great life, but we prefer to remember his, beautiful artwork in his heyday. And, he's just one of the stories here. I think he did this one story that's kind of like a in the vein of a Errol Flynn novel,
sure.
Daring.
Yes, very much. That's the Seahawk, absolutely, man, right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
You can see the influence.
Yeah, and some of these pages you can see just packed with backgrounds and swords and it's Pirate 101. You read one of these little stories and you have the voices and the R and the matey floating around in your head, and it's a kick. It's so much fun.
So was it ironic when Alan Moore had pirate comics being so popular in Watchmen, because the Watchmen universe had real life superheroes, so comics leaned into pirates?
Yeah, I think it was. And, I don't think they ever had that fantastic level of popularity, although as we researched and found some of the best ones, there were a lot out there. They very much, but, never as strong as like, the true crime or the romance or the humor or the superhero books. It was always a genre, I think, that was half a step behind. And every time someone tries to do another pirate book, I think folks enjoy it for a little bit and then maybe lose interest. I mean, I love that El Cazador a few years ago with
yes, me too. Chuck Dixon was writing that. It was I forget, was it Epting?
Yeah, Steve Epting drew that, and CrossGen, and like this month, Sean Murphy has kind of a piratey theme in the Batman series he's doing. What do we call White Knight?
White Knight.
White Knight, yeah. So there's like a pirate whiff in there, and then invariably someone will have their pirate adventure. Tom Strong has 2 issues of Pirates, or a particular character, and it's always fun. And I think there's I think Shanghai Red recently, an Image book,
of course,
yes, a pirate book, fantastic book. I think that I learned about from your show, in fact.
When I think Sabella did Shanghai.
Yeah.
I want to say.
Yeah.
The Eisner stuff, is that Hawks of the Sea? Is that his?
It is. Yeah.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
a pre-Spirit Eisner creation, as I remember.
it is. It is. It has a charm to it. I'm not sure if it has a lot of that brilliant innovation that we come to expect from the Spirit, but you can kind of see the groundwork there.
And that's the great thing, and really, IDW is really exceptional when they find these old classics and remind us of the greatness of those periods. And I'm sure I've told you this before. Anytime I talk about IDW, I know like somebody Chris Somney, who's a good 15 years younger than us, really appreciated comic strips and really got into Secret Agent Corrigan and Rip Kirby and
yeah.
all those great adventure strips. And I, being the boxing fan I am, Big Bang Bolt or Big Ben Bolt.
Ben Bolt, yeah.
Big Ben Bolt, of course.
Colin Murphy, yeah.
There you go. Great book. I own that book.
Oh, yeah. Isn't it beautiful? Yeah.
Scorsese Smith.
Yeah.
What were you going to look up, man?
Just gorgeous. Yeah. I was going to say.
Yeah, no, feel free.
What was I going to say? Oh, yeah.
What did you have there in your hand, Groucho? That doesn't look like a cigar.
Yes, I was going to say. So Clover, which is founded by Ted Adams, one of the co-founders of IDW, is doing this, and they're doing like a beautiful Spirit book too. And
that's great to hear. Something that gives me a reason to reach out to Ted and get him back on the show.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, I mean, great entrepreneur, super individual. I just ordered mine today, and
that's excellent. No, he was. Again, as the publisher, a great creative force at IDW for many years. So happy to follow him in the new projects. That's terrific.
Yeah. It's been fun to do. It's been just so much fun to do.
What else you got going on, Ed?
So we've also got another project. Last year at Ithacon, we celebrated the 60th year of Twilight Zone and the 50th year of Night Gallery.
Wow.
And the reason that we did that is because Rod Serling was from upstate New York, and he spent his latter days as a professor at Ithaca College.
Yes, go on.
So that was lovely. We dug up all these old pictures, and invariably, like every picture has him talking with students with these sideburns and always smoking a butt.
Yeah.
Out of, it's like, don't smoke, kids. That was a lesson there.
Yeah.
So we learned so much about Serling, and Nick Parisi is an author who did a recent biography, and I just fell in love with the guy's backstory. I've always been a Twilight Zone fan, but his backstory, and I wanted to find an expert for those old Twilight Zone comics.
The Gold Key stuff.
Yeah, it's a fantastic run, and invariably it's like there's a Bob McLeod story, or there's a Alex Toth story, or there's Walt Simonson. Frank Miller's first published work was in Twilight Zone.
Oh, wow.
And, so it's this kind of, again, this like crazy collection of who's who, stories. I'd say it's very uneven. A lot of the stories are a little rough.
Oh, sure.
You come across like Mike Sikowski story number 3, and it's like, oh my goodness gracious. It's not really true to the marvelousness of the Twilight Zone, but so there was no expert on Twilight Zone, and I presented at the Serling Fest this presentation of all the cool things that I found out to celebrate this series, and we're working to get those collected in some way, shape, or form. And now, of course, Serling sold Twilight Zone, and CBS owns it, the folks who own Star Trek. And there's a lot of reasons why it hasn't been reprinted in the past, but I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to pull something together, and I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and especially the fact, and I don't know if they're planning a second season of the CBS All Access show, but Jordan Peele has been the latest curator of the Twilight Zone. Isn't it interesting, Ed? I mean, you and I are, again, old enough to know all the different iterations post-Serling of the Twilight Zone. And even though there are, again, like we were rolling our eyes about some of the Gold Key comics, there's some rough stories in there, but also there's some really good gems. And I mean, from the one that I know Martin Pasco and Straczynski worked on, and I forget the name of the producer of that run in the mid-'80s. Right.
Yep, in the 80s, a couple good stories out of that. And
even the one that Ira Stephen Bear did at UPN, And it was interesting. And it was like, and I've heard him say in interviews, he's like, I'll do it. I don't want to do it. But if you give it to somebody else, you're going to ruin it. So I'll do my best. But I mean, he kind of knew he was chasing the ghost of, one of the all-time sci-fi greats and the Murderer's Row, as you know, of so many incredible, exceptional writers during that Serling run. I mean, from Hugh Beaumont to George Clayton, and I'm blanking on his third name, George Clayton Johnson.
Right.
And I mean, those are two easy. Richard Matheson,
yeah,
Earl Hamner from the Waltons, more better known for the Waltons, but wrote a lot of really great, significant Twilight Zones.
Yeah, I mean, Serling kind of led all those guys, and it was top-notch stuff. He didn't write them all; he kind of oversaw them all, and I think the Twilight Zone is tough, right? Because it's like, oh, let's celebrate Christmas this year, and I want it to be just as wonderful as that best Christmas when I was a little child. And you know what? It's never going to be like that. Your memory kind of changes things around. Maybe we don't have, 5 seasons of DVDs of old Christmases like we do at Twilight Zone.
But also, think you're right. And not only 5 seasons, but then when you pick it apart, these are like 30-plus episode seasons. And you're right. I mean, Serling obviously wrote like a third of them or a 60% of them, then rewrote as the story editor, kind of, shepherded along the ones that he maybe didn't write. But all these classics, and yeah, man, I mean, that's the thing. That's a hell of a lot of home runs, and it is really hard for any writer's room to even approach the level of quality that all those people were able to crank out.
Oh yeah, and then on top of it, it's like, this one's kind of a silly story, but I love Anne Francis and the way she acts in this one. I mean, like, there's
is that the mannequin one?
Yeah, like the mannequin one, right? I don't know. Is that a great story? I don't know, but
well, I'll give you a silly one that's a throwaway one that I love. It's the one with Keenan Wynn, where he's the author and he speaks into his tape and is able to change reality.
Yeah,
and that was a fun one, and it ends with a silly kind of shrug in the best way.
Yeah, that one's
meta,
right?
Say again.
That one's very meta, Serling kind of gets involved with that.
Right. At the end, he decides that Rod's getting in the way of his story, so he edits him out.
Yeah.
And he vanishes. Yeah, absolutely. Right. No, I love that one. And isn't it interesting? Because I think some of the ones where they really do attempt broad comedy just didn't work. Carol Burnett and, God, even the Buster Keaton one, which I appreciate, should have been better. It should have been better.
Probably should have been. Probably should have been. Probably should have been. Oh, I have one story about those old ones that are amazing. So in Walter Simonson's story, all these old comics have, like, the guys must have been working from 2 or 3 file shots of Serling. So everything has like his head like this, and he's, well, here in this story, a man finds, and you can see all the artists are working from the same one, but Walter did this funny thing. So there's like this story with trolls and kind of Tolkien-esque. And he puts Serling on a giant toadstool dressed like a leprechaun.
Oh, my God.
And he gives him like a clay pipe. And, in today's world where, IP is so tightly controlled, that would never fly. Like,
you're 100% right. That's amazing.
Never, ever fly. And, for that, somehow they got it in there, and it's, it's Walter Simonson artwork, so it's just beautiful, and it's so silly and fun.
Gold Key, the licenses they had were really interesting, and everyone, or when they do talk about like the Star Trek comics they did, we all hear the stories about, the artists never really got to see the show, so they had their own like kind of bizarre concepts that they would do. But even everything I think the Gold Key pulled out, those painted covers are always so exceptional.
Oh, yeah.
And eye-catching. And I have several. Steve Seeley and I are diving through the dollar bins searching for those reprints just to have the covers. Because the covers are just so beautiful. Everything they did was just exceptional that way.
They are. All those painted covers are gorgeous. A lot of George Wilson. Yeah, just fantastic stuff.
Unbelievable, man. Yeah, and I remember, too, not only Twilight Zone, but they had the Boris Karloff Thriller anthology, and they were doing that. I remember Dark Shadows comics coming from Gold Key. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man. They were really scratching the itch of a lot of television properties, and also their Lost in Space comics were really interesting.
Yeah, and there's a whole story behind those too, right? Like a little different than the show and
Space
predate.
Family Robinson, yes,
Yeah,
very different.
but they have a charm to them,
Yeah,
definitely a
definitely,
charm. Yeah, and so
absolutely.
many of that stuff, like the Karloff and the Dark Shadows. Younger readers have been exposed to that because it's been collected and reprinted. The rights just weren't that complicated, so you could get those, Boris Karloff stories from Dark Horse from a couple of years ago, and you can't get the Twilight Zone. So that I want to work really hard and make those available to fans again. And I think,
Certainly, and like you point out, just a great group of Bronze Age creators that a lot of times they were doing their first gigs. And again, back to Star Trek, I remember Len Wein talking about writing Star Trek comics for Gold Key. So yeah,
yeah,
it's it. So do they revert back to, well, like you said, in the Twilight Zone case, it's CBS that I guess owns the comic book stuff. And yeah, have you kind of scoured to see any of the other Gold Key stuff who has the various rights? Does anyone hold the Gold Key rights that any other IP holder didn't like get the comics back or whatever? Is there any free stuff like that out there?
yeah. Well, let me say there it's a sticky wicket, and essentially it's tough because the time and energy that you put into something to get everything cleared, like take
Yeah,
the Twilight Zone, for instance, it might not be worth it versus the financial reward that the organization will get, if they have
certainly.
lawyers put in 100 man hours, right? And all of a sudden
Right,
you've wiped it out. But that's important because you don't want somebody, coming out of the woodwork after you put all this effort and say, well, no, 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 you can't do that, or let me show
right.
you why. So, it's kind of this, crazy tightrope of, being fair to everybody involved and making sure that you've got your T's crossed and I's dotted, and you've worked with lawyers in an appropriate manner, but still, you're bringing stuff forward and letting the work be celebrated by a new generation of readers. So
Understood. Yeah, and again, it's interesting in a different way. Like King Features holding on to Flash Gordon and the Phantom and Mandrake and so many other great ideas. And sometimes, literally, we've been talking about, like, for instance, Doc Savage. Looks like
yeah,
that it's being fast tracked, or not fast tracked, but I guess possibly being put in television production. And it's like, wow, think of all the years since the pocketbooks, let alone the Marvel black and white comics of the 70s,
oh my,
where, and there's been a few here and there. I remember in the 80s, the Kuberts, both Joe and Andy and Adam all doing Doc
oh,
Savage back then, and it was a great book. I remember in the 90s, Millennium Comics doing a Doc Savage book.
yeah,
So, it's popped up here and there. But, yeah, if they're going to, I think it's smart to do it as a TV show because maybe we've all learned the John Carter lesson that you can't just out of the blue go, hey, John Carter, and us old farts know what the hell you're talking about. But a lot of other people, and if you don't explain that it's a whole Martian thing, it's like, what?
yeah,
Who? Why
yeah.
do we care about this?
Or even that whole notion of like John Carter had 1,000 things working against it,
Yes, there's a
unfortunately.
great book about all the things working against it. Go on.
Yeah, but I worry too. Like younger audience would see Doc Savage and say like, this is kind of a ripoff of Indiana Jones, or this is a
Yeah,
ripoff of
half
all this.
half Indiana Jones, half Captain America. You
Right.
could say,
Yeah,
and certainly
absolutely.
Superman in there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean all the like good citizen stuff of Captain America, and I think it's a struggle. I mean I'll believe that one when I see it. I sure hope it happens. I think it'd be great. Big Doc Savage fan.
Sure.
Just read, geez, one of the original novels that I had never read in the old days and had so much fun with it, and it was a ball. I think I can only read like one Doc Savage every 2 years tops, but
I understand. I stopped. I
that's from
stopped
a guy who
reading
loves
them
it.
back in my 20s or 30s. I think is probably the last time I picked up one of the books. Although I appreciated Anthony Tolan bringing them back in those great pulp collections that he was doing, and also the pardon me, the
Yeah.
additional matter that he was putting in the different additional articles and things.
Oh, the articles were fantastic, and yeah, sad to see that end. And then Will Murray did a really strong
Yes,
run of, and he's still doing kind of in that genre, but some
yes, you're right about that. Shame
novels.
on me. Yes, I did
Yeah,
read several of those. Yes.
Pat Savage novel, and he had two team ups with the Shadow and Doc. And
Yes.
I didn't read the second one yet, but the first one is fantastic. The first one is really fantastic. I just
I
loved it.
agree. Did he write your Captain Atom or Captain Action book? Who wrote your Captain Action book?
Oh, sure. So the book that was kind of about like the articles was Michael Urey, who does Back Issue magazine.
Yes.
And the writers we had on the book were Fabian Nicieza, Stephen Grant, and Marv Wolfman.
And were those the novels, or was that within that Michael Urey collection?
Those were the comics, and then we did some novels too.
Yeah, who wrote the novels?
Oh, the great Jim Beard wrote the novels.
Oh, very good. Sure.
And, yeah, Jim's a great guy. We should plug. Jim has this. Jim has a very cool project coming up, which I was asked to participate in. So he did this book called 14 Miles to Gotham City, which was all essays on the old Batman TV show.
I remember it well. I read that book. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so he put together this new book where a bunch of great writers, guys like Chuck Dixon, Paul Kupperberg, and all these fantastic guys comment on one pair of episodes from this first season of the Batman show, and it's got a great name. It's called Zlonk Zap Zowie, or
sure, the punch sound effects from the show.
You can kind of see it as you say.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's going to be a fantastic book. I think it's coming out this summer, and I contributed an article, and I also contributed some illustrations to it. And
yeah, it's great, man. I was telling you before we started recording, I'm really enjoying your sketching. I think it's always a pleasure to see your stuff, man. Absolutely. And you were very kind. You sent me an issue of Back Issue, and I can't remember. Oh, it was all about Marvel Horror. And you included an illustration in that, and that was really nice. Or was it your Christmas card that you had a sketch in? I know you've sent me a couple sketches in the last couple years.
Yeah. Well, that's like a Catto family tradition for years, where we've sketched the cards. But yeah, I've worked really hard on the sketching. In some ways, it's it's like my bowling league, right? So let's try to get it up. So I do work for Airship 27, and they're great. I'm doing my third book now, which is all about this guy Ravenswood, who was this supernatural detective from the 30s, and Ron Fortier runs that outfit, and that's a lot.
Wow, I love Ron. Absolutely, yeah. I've always enjoyed his Green Hornet stuff that he did back in the day.
Oh, those are fantastic. He's got this whole new pulp movement is like the younger cousin of comics, even though they predate comics, and it's so much fun to do the illustrations for those. And I try and go all old school, like pen and ink, and very low tech, and it's just a kick. And that's been fun. So we did 2 books, and that one comes out. I hope he's not watching this, because I owe him some illustrations. He'll be like, "Why weren't you drawing? Why were you drawing?" You gotta mix it up. And then for Back Issue magazine, that's another one of those labor of love. So Michael Urey is the mastermind behind the award-winning Back Issue magazine, and we've.
Did you do some stories in there? Is that why you sent me that issue?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been selecting. I've done some articles on cool things like Thriller, the '80s book, Trevor Von Eden.
Yes,
him as a guest, and I'm so.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I saw that on the list that Trevor was going to be at Ithacon. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I did the Archie sorcery, and
right.
Yeah,
that's what I remember. That was the issue you sent me. Was about your Archie stuff in there, and it was a great horror comic collection of various things. But yeah, the Archie horror stuff was very interesting to read about. Definitely, man.
Oh, it's so much fun to those assignments are great. So step 1 is assemble the old comics, and then step 2 is talk to creators who were involved. Step 3 is write about it. So I mean, each of those things is super fun. My next 2 are kind of funky. One is this Marvel War book called War is Hell, where the last half of the series had this crazy premise where a guy was kind of reincarnated in different wars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
What
guys like
decade was that series from?
early '70s.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, early '70s, and it's a funky book. And then the other one is just the opposite. The other book that I've got to do is based off a Saturday morning cartoon series, and that's the very thoughtful and insightful Lancelot Link Secret Chimp.
I'm a big fan. I just had one of the cast members back in November on the show talking about that, Bernie Capel.
Yeah, absolutely.
He played the
So
bad guy in Lancelot Link. Absolutely, I
yeah,
know. We
yeah,
grew up on that stuff. That's a crazy show. That
it's
is a really weird, crazy show.
bananas.
Back when it was no problem. Yeah, we'll have the chimpanzee on for a segment on Ed Sullivan. It'll be
Yeah,
hilarious. Hey, let's do a half-hour spy spoof with
yeah,
chimpanzees. Great idea.
right. As long as they don't like defecate, on set or it's like,
those
those
those poor
chickens.
chimpanzees, they're wearing cat's eye glasses and they're in dresses and they're in suits and they're running around. It is, I mean, and again, as a fan of Planet of the Apes, don't get me wrong, I get it. But,
Yeah,
and of course, we were at the tail end of put a gorilla on the cover and then the comic book will sell.
yeah, right,
It was that same
exactly.
thinking. It really was that same thinking.
Same idea. So
That's
yes,
great, man.
I gotta pull together 2,000 words on Lancelot Lake, and that'll be a challenge. Let me tell you. But
Was that in Charlton? Who had the license for Lancelot Link?
yeah, no. So that was all Gold Key stuff.
More Gold Key stuff. That's insane.
Yeah, yeah,
Fascinating company, man. Also Western and Dell before Gold Key. But no, that whole history of Gold Key is fascinating.
yeah. So weird and crazy, and beautiful. And as you look at the things they left behind, they're so much fun. And I love, like you mentioned, diving in the back issue bins. I love doing that and finding those treasures. And you'll pull up like Brothers of the Spear number 11, and it's marvelous. And it's like, what is this? I never saw this as a kid. It's beautiful.
That's awesome. And also, I know you're writing articles too for Mike Gold's website, right? Don't you write for? Is it Comic Mix?
Yeah, sure. So, Comic Mix, I still contribute occasionally to, and Adrian Nash started a new one called Pop Culture Squad.
Outstanding.
Yeah, and so I do the Wednesday column for that, and that's again another opportunity to talk about some cool things and speak with neat people. Um, Tomorrow's column is all about this fascinating thing that a comic store did. It's called Pop Rock. It's in Rochester, and they are a combination of a comic book store and a cereal bar.
Oh, fun.
So they have a bar, like where you get alcoholic drinks, but they only have cereal, and you can have cocktails with like Captain Crunch and Cocoa Pebbles.
Hilarious.
Yeah, and they had this amazing morning last Saturday to celebrate National Cereal Day, and they gave away comics and had cereal, and the place was packed. And as you think about the way all comic shops struggle to get people in the door and to keep them engaged, I was just so happy for them. This again, this silly, super creative way to bring new people in and show them the world of comics. It was just marvelous.
I love the ties between breakfast cereals and animation and all those great Jay Ward Captain Crunch commercials over the years.
Yeah, you know what? They put the commercials on the big screens, so everything on the big screen was vintage cereal commercials.
That's great, and I know younger people have the same affection for Boo Berry and Count Chocula, and
Yeah,
up to the Cookie Crisp fairy, I suppose, of the '90s, or Wizard or whatever from the early 2000s and the '90s. No, it's an interesting. It really is weird, and again, I understand. The parents right now, they're putting sugar in children. It's
oh
wrong.
gosh, yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, I worry I got diabetes as I had this giant, but it was worth it.
But I'm raising my hand, son. I'm with you. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
exactly, because we're eating ding dongs for breakfast. I
yeah,
totally understand it. We really did. That is the one thing. I mean, on the one hand, those Captain Crunch things, those commercials were entertaining as hell. But we really, man, we had the worst diets. The
oh man.
space sticks. Hey kids, it sounds like fun. Let's eat those. What's in them? We don't care. They're called space sticks. I'm sure they're great.
I like space, don't you? Eat it.
And all that crap. I mean, yeah, Jesus, man. I'm surprised we're not dead from our sugar
Oh, God.
overdose.
when we were kids, if you had a ho-ho in your lunch, if mom packed a ho-ho, you would you could trade anything for that. It was like cigarettes and Stalag 13, like anything with a ho-ho.
You're hilarious. You're a true collector, Ed. Exactly. That's the way you should think about that stuff. It's all good. There we go. You probably have to get going.
Oh no, geez. So this my beautiful wife just
Yes.
and no. So we kind of started the conversation about Ithaca College and struggling to figure out how to deal with the convention and the unfortunate thing where we had to cancel it or postpone it for this year. My wife just handed me a note that Cornell, which is located in the same town as Ithaca College, just announced they'll have the rest of their semester be online.
Wow.
Believe that. Holy smokes.
Yeah, man. This is unfortunately, the current situation we're in. And the impact is being felt on all these different fields. And yeah.
Breaking news. I've just been handed this, John.
Yes, I appreciate that. No, that was great. All right, before we wrap up, I want to talk about what looks like great comic strip art all the way to, I guess it would be your left, the opposite wall. Is that Juliet Jones on top? I don't even know.
Oh my gosh! Well, you're very kind. So we have a Thor corner box in the corner.
Lovely.
That's a beautiful thing. That's Joe Jusko did these reproductions of corner boxes.
Oh wow!
Where he would paint the corner box. Of course, he's a disciple of Buscema, so that one is just beautiful. And then he put them together and even kind of like scuffed up the words and the letters.
Sure.
And that was that was absolutely beautiful.
That's cool.
Yeah, the let's see, as you look
the
at
frame stuff. Yeah, it was, but no, keep going. I would have blown off the Jusko corner box. That's great. So are there two of them there?
Oh yeah. So the three that you see in a row, they're actually the pieces that I did for Jim Beard's book.
Great.
So yeah, so like here's Catwoman. The book is going to be gorgeous.
And that's fantastic, man. Hey, that turned out great.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Good Lord. So what are the other two?
Yeah, the other two are a couple of the other actresses. So Sherry Jones, this one kind of came out nicely.
She was on Batman as well?
Yeah. So she was, I forget what episode, one of the bad guy's girlfriends.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. And then, let's see. And then this girl was in the chocolate shop. And so this actress, they sent this to her, and she was thrilled, and she sent a note back to me.
That's really nice. Is that the one with where the Joker's on campus?
Yes.
And is that the girl that's having malts with Dick Grayson and everything in the booth?
Exactly.
Classic. Sure.
The things we remember. Yeah, here's beautiful Paul Gulacy.
Oh, that's great. A lady action from Paul.
Yeah.
Am I right? Is it lady action?
Oh, you're spot on. Absolutely.
Terrific. I love Paul. He's a great guy. I saw him at Terrificon last year in Connecticut.
Yeah. And he's another one of those guys, that we got to work with through that project. And
sure. Now,
Captain
and right behind you, between the Superman and one of the Joe Jusko's Marvel boxes, what's that color one over there?
So that was one I did a few years ago. It's a Catwoman, and it was colored by Glenn Whitmore, who did the colors are just beautiful on it.
Yeah.
And it was in the San Diego souvenir book.
Oh, that's great, man.
It was so much fun to contribute, to San Diego in that way.
100%, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Ed, this was great, man. I appreciate you sharing not only the information about Ithacon, but all the projects you're working on, and of course your incredible art collection of your own work, and also the great pieces that you've been able to collect over the years. This is great.
Well, I don't have a Gabriel Hardman Captain comment on my wall yet, but I aspire to. John.
I understand, man. Gabe accepts commissions. The one that I always covet that, God, I wish I had thought of it, and I'm sure you've seen it online. And he's promised, he's like, no, I'm never going to do it again. Was someone asked him to do Orson Welles, 1940s Orson Welles as Batman.
Oh, wow.
And it really is fantastic. I mean, he doesn't have the cowl on, so it's the Orson head. And he's he's kind of Adam West paunchy a little bit. Not a perfect body, but again, we're used to it from 66 Batman. Yeah. And it looks amazing. And it really is like, oh my God, that's exactly what it would look like if like, he decided to make a cereal with Republic or one of those, or Monogram or one of those people.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
I'm telling you, I know. And some of the great stunt casting you could do with old Hollywood and some of these old superheroes and stuff. I mean, of course, Errol Flynn would make an amazing Tony Stark.
Yeah. One just real quick, but
Sure.
before we sign up, DC did a book called Crimes of Passion last month.
I loved it.
That Greg Smallwood Batman story seems like just what you're talking about.
You're right about that. And again, it reminds me that I got to have Smallwood on the show because I've loved his art for years and so many great projects. And but I'm really glad because, I was on a podcast last week and someone asked me, they're like, what are you reading lately? And I said that Crimes of Passion collection was so beautiful. So well put together and just terrific short stories and beautiful art. Absolutely beautiful.
Stephanie Phillips did the Wildcat story.
I'm aware of the boxing story. Yes, indeed.
And I love that. And that boxing was great. And then I just loved the whole book. It was great. The question story was beautiful.
Totally, man. No. And I want to say, and maybe I'm confusing it with the Batman 80 collection, but I think there was a Slam Bradley story in there. Pretty sure there was.
Yeah, I think there was. Yeah.
So, and Jimmy Palmiotti, if we'll stay on the subject, he was saying, "Hey, what characters would you like me to see me draw?" And I'm like, King Faraday. Jesus, what are you waiting for? And I'd love to see Jimmy write a King Faraday story.
That would be fun. I think Gulacy did some King Faraday back in the day, right?
I believe so, and of course, character in New Frontier. So I know Darwin certainly had fun with him.
Yeah.
I'm always at, again, it's those Nick Fury, King Faraday kind of spy characters and stuff. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Can't get enough. That's my pirate thing.
I hear you. No, that's great stuff too.
So the pirate book, it comes out when?
The pirate book comes out next Wednesday, the 18th.
Oh, great. Wow, next week. Okay.
Yeah, from Clover Press. Comic shop edition is $12.95, and then you can get this special edition directly from Clover, and this one is $24.99, I think.
And it's a hardcover.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, man.
It's actually, it's kind of hardcover-esque. It's got this, oversized covers, but it's still very light and super readable.
Oh, I see. Well, that's smart too. That keeps the price point down. So that's great. It looks great, man.
Yeah, it's great. So well, thank you for letting me promote all this stuff. As always, so much fun. We'll spend some more time together as I'm driving in the car, although I'll just be listening. You never seem to talk back to me in those situations.
I'm sorry, Ed, but no, I appreciate you listening, and also today being a lab rat and allowing me. I kind of begged you to do it on camera rather than just my usual audio because I just want to try and do more video.